Hello everyone, thank you for joining us at this News Hour, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Babla Jonathan. In our top stories in this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television, insecurity continue threatening and taking away several lives in the far north region of the Republic of Cameroon and other parts of the Lake Chad basin. Activities of terrorists continue bringing untold suffering, pains, sorrow, and enormous destruction upon the people in their properties. And the first quarter of 2023 goes down into records as the deadliest for illegal migrants. The International Organization for Migration says that the number of persons dying in the Mediterranean Sea in the quest for greener pastures is on a sharp increase. Those were our top stories. Thank you for joining us. Following the death of the suspected murderer of 6 persons in Nanga Eboko in the central region of the Republic of Cameroon, the family has been wondering about the possibility for justice to be obtained, and speaking to some legal minds, they say it is possible for the suspect if the suspect has an accomplice. If not, the case closes automatically, and if there is no accomplice, the family of the victim can seek for damages. Equinoxe reports.
32-year-old Mahaman Nawali, a Nigerian businessman in Nanga Eboko, Upper Sanaga division of the Central region, accused of killing Vanessa Yubi Kamba, her 3 children, her cousin and kid sister, 6 persons in total, has taken away his own life by hanging. This comes after he was arrested on Tuesday, April 11, following investigations carried out by elements of the Central Judicial Police. He allegedly committed suicide same day at night in the cell of the Regional Directorates of the Central Judicial Police in Yaoundé under unclear circumstances. His corpse was later taken to the morgue of the Yaoundé Central Hospital. Mahaman commits suicide at the time the grieving family seeks for justice. We spoke to a legal mind if in this context it is case closed.
If you look at section 74 of the Cameroonian Penal Code, it states that criminal responsibility is personal. That's to say there's no way another person can be liable for the crimes or the actions, omissions of another person. Now, if you go further to read section 62 sub 1 sub A of the Criminal Procedure Code now, it gives you instances wherein a criminal action instituted can be terminated without any further effect. One of those instances is the death of the suspect, the accused, or whatever the case might be. So in our present context, the accused person, the principal suspect, rather, is dead, committed suicide. So automatically the criminal action has to stop based on section 62 sub 1 sub A of the Criminal Procedure Code and section 74 of the Penal Code.
Another legal mind, Barrister Kamwa Limen, speaking off camera, said the criminal proceeding can only continue if Mahaman had an accomplice who will be investigated, arrested and tried. If guilty, he will pay for the crime committed and will automatically be labeled main suspect. Barrister Agbondoku, however, says the family can claim damages.
There is a possibility for the victims to file a civil action against the successors of the deceased offender. Now, they have to seize the civil court for damages. It's no longer criminal because the criminal action is stopped. Based on what? Section 74 of the Penal Code and Section 62 sub 1 sub A of the Criminal Procedure Code.
It should be recalled, Vanessa and the other 5 were murdered in cold blood on Thursday, April 16, 2023, in their home.
Activities of non-state armed groups marked by violence and abduction of people continue to create panic in the Mayo Sava, Mayo Chanaga, and Logon and Shari divisions of the Republic of Cameroon as a result of frequent clashes between the non-state armed group fighters and the forces of defense and security of the Republic of Cameroon. 1.6 million people are in need of aid, while 385,000 people are internally displaced. Details in this report compiled by ACA Lucy Lengo.
The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that the activities of non-state armed groups, generally marked by violent incursions into villages, looting as well as abduction of people, continue to negatively impact the daily lives of population in the Mayo Sava, Mayo Tsanaga, Logon and Share divisions of the far north region of Cameroon. Added to these are the frequent clashes between the non-state armed groups and the defense and security forces. The clashes often have devastating consequences on civilians. Security sources reported at least 83 incidents related to non-state armed groups' activities, confrontations with the defense and security forces, and subsequent military operations in February this year. This marks a sharp increase compared to 53 incidents accumulated in December 2022 and January 2023. The localities located near the Mandara Mountain, as well as those located in and around Lake Chad, continue to be the most affected. At least 23 civilians were killed and 24 injured during this incident, and many people's properties were destroyed. February was also marked by an upsurge in kidnapping, particularly in the Lake Chad area of Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. At least 82 people have been abducted, usually for ransom. This highlights the economic motivation and funding needs that will largely underlie this phenomenon. From February 1st to 28, 2023, more than 1,652 people were displaced due to insecurity. Nearly 700 Nigerians registered in a Minowal camp between February 1 and February 15, 2023. More than 82 civilians kidnapped during February by unidentified armed individuals in the Logon and Share division. An attack on the Ozar Health Center by armed individuals in the Mayo Sava division and destruction of property and equipment were recorded. Globally, 1.6 million people are in need of aid, 385,000 internally displaced, 47,000 people are refugees in rural areas, 76,000 in camps, 138,000 have returned to their villages, while 962,000 are targeted.
We stay with you, ACA Lucy Liengu, to talk about the consumption of illegal drugs gaining grounds in the second subdivision of Cameroon's political capital, Yaoundé, and the divisional officer of that administrative unit is stepping up efforts to eradicate that ill in his area of command. Greater details in the following report.
To fight against the consumption of illegal pharmaceutical products and contraband drugs in the city of Yaoundé, the divisional officer of Yaoundé 2, together with forces of law and order, destroyed several shops involved in the production and sale of these illicit drugs.
La briqueterie, Tinga Elobi, le secteur Mokolo.
Mokolo and some other neighborhoods are known for disorder in our subdivision. Severally, we have received information about the sale of these illegal drugs. Mokolo in particular, because recently people are unable to move freely and engage in their daily activities. In 1 or 2 meters, you must find a place where they sell these drugs.
À l'intérieur duquel on vend ce que vous savez, la drogue.
The inhabitants say the consumption of these drugs has exposed the youth to mental health problems, misconduct, and incivility has been the order of the day.
Nous avons voulu marquer vraiment pas à des...
We have taken note of so many things happening in our subdivision, so it is our wish to fight against urban disorder, thereby ameliorating the living condition of our population. That's the principal reason for this operation carried out by forces of law and order in the presence of the divisional officer. The destruction, according to the divisional officer, is also to fight against urban disorder while protecting the population's health.
De lutter pour la bonne santé.
Our objective is preserving our population, mostly their health, so we have no regret in dissolving this activity.
Ces activités.
Makeshift structures, illicit medications were burnt at the end of the operation, while the divisional officer of Yaoundé 2 promised to put in more efforts so as to maintain order.
Secretaries or administrative professionals in the Republic of Cameroon say it is time for the society to have a positive impression about their job and position, regarded most often as unreceptive. The secretaries say most times the growth of enterprises depend on them. They were speaking in Douala during a come-together marking the International Day of the Secretaries and Administrative Professionals, and Abilaleke spoke to some of them. And now report.
Secretaries or administrative professionals are those persons who assist with correspondence, make appointments, and carry out administrative tasks in the office with the directives of the boss. Most times, the welfare of the company lies on the decisions taken by the secretary with the accord of the boss.
It is like they say, behind a successful man, there is a strong woman. So behind every successful director or company, there should be a strong secretary. And so this managerial role is principally to help the company succeed by getting proper information and working with the information, giving proper information to your boss.
Secretaries are not usually regarded with a positive eye, an impression which the administrative professionals themselves are uncomfortable with.
Some of the complaints is that we don't welcome guests, we don't welcome visitors, or we block them from seeing our bosses, or that maybe when they come to see us, we are doing something else and we don't concentrate on helping them. They think that we are there just to be able to become the boss's second wife or whatsoever. That also, there is no school to find a husband, but we are not there for that. We are there to help and to work, not as girlfriends, not as wives, but as assistants, and we like our job. We are very close to our bosses, but for work to go ahead, not because we want to have anything particular with them.
Between leaving for work very early, closing from work very late, most often after their bosses, are some of the preoccupations secretaries think should be looked into.
Secretaries are like leftovers in the companies. An example, if I'm recruited the same day with an accountant, in 20 years' time, I will remain that same secretary at the same position with the same grade. Meanwhile, the accountant maybe will become the director of finance or even the general manager. But they will not think about making a secretary become a head of department or a director. And sometimes they feel that if the secretary wants to improve in a position, she must leave a job to go and do something else.
You know, people have their various attitudes and characters. So if you as a secretary, you are not well in your mind, you are not cultured, you are not confident, you are not competent, it will be very difficult for you to manage your boss, your colleagues, and the public.
Though women are always at the forefront when we talk about secretaries, men are also into this business. Their greatest wish is for their job and position to be considered as a push and not a pull to the enterprise and the society as a whole.
Thousands of Africans continue dying in the Mediterranean Sea in the search for greener pastures abroad. In the most recent incidents in the central Mediterranean route, close to 500 died, and there are now fears that this is becoming normal. Greater details with Malaglory.
The first quarter of 2023, between January and March, was the deadliest of migrants crossing the Mediterranean since 2017. During this quarter of the year, the Missing Migrants Project of the International Organization for Migration documented the death of 441 migrants in the central Mediterranean road. The increasing number of deaths on the world's most dangerous maritime comes amidst reports of delays in state. The Mission Migrants Project points to delays in search and rescue operations of state on the Mediterranean road as driving factor in at least 6 incidents this year. And this led to the death of over 127 people, while the complete absence of response to the 7th case claimed the lives of at least 73 migrants. IOM Director General Antonio Vitorino says the persisting humanitarian crisis in the central Mediterranean is unbearable, with more than 20,000 deaths recorded on this route since 2014. He fears the situation has become normal. He has urged states to respond in order to avoid a situation in which delays are costing thousands of human lives.
In sports, football, basketball and athletics will spice the weekend for several sports lovers, and the Elite One matches will be in action with a ticket for the Final Four at stake. And while in basketball, the Final Four competition enters a decisive phase this weekend. Smart Njikan Gabriel has our sports roundup.
The battle for the Final Four in the Elite One Championship continues this weekend, with just 3 playing days left before the end of the season. In Group A, league leaders Canon Sportif of Yaoundé with 31 points will be at the Mbuda Stadium to challenge PWD Bamenda. A win for the Kpakum will keep them firm at the top, and their hopes of participating in the playoffs will be alive. Immediate followers of Canon Sportif of Yaoundé on the classification table, UMS of Loum with 30 points, will have a difficult trip to the Rumdaja Stadium as they tackle Cotton Sport of Garwa. In Group B, Bambutus of Mbuda with 33 points at the top will be at home to tackle Lesastre of Douala. The Mbuda boys, who are also sure for a place in the Final Four, will certainly not let a point off their sleeves, even though they have been for some months without salaries paid to the players. Apart from Dragon FC of Yaoundé, which is already relegated before the end of the league, Yafoot of Yaoundé in Group B, Njiko FC and Renaissance of Ngumu in Group A could still fight for survival with the 3 days left. In basketball, the Final Four of the National Elite Women and Men's Competition will be played this weekend. In the women's category, we have University of Douala, Batiston, FAP and Overdose who will be chasing the title, while in the men's category, FAP Yaoundé, Douala Firebirds, École de Basket of Douala and Beyak of Yaoundé will tussle for the title. In athletics, the Reunification Stadium of Douala will serve as the venue for the 4th Interclub meeting this weekend. The competition will see the participation of several clubs, amongst them the National Institute of Youth and Sports, FAP, and Athletics in Action, AIE. Highlights of this 4th meeting will include triple jump, long jump, high jump, javelin throw, discus, shot put, alongside track and field events. Out of the country, former Cameroonian international goalkeeper Andre Onana has featured on the top 5 best player of the UEFA Champions League after the first leg quarter-final games of the competition. Andre Onana, who is 3rd with 313 points on the list, has kept 6 clean sheets in 9 Champions League matches this season. Manchester City's Erling Haaland tops the list. Finally, in Germany, Bayern Munich have left Sadio Mane out of their squad list for Saturday's match against Hoffenheim. It is alleged that the sanction was because Sadio Mane punched Leroy Sané after the Champions League defeat to Manchester City. Sadio Mane wasn't happy with the way Leroy Sané spoke to him after that defeat in the midweek.
Jikan Gabriel ending the first part of this newscast. Talking Point is up next. Guest today, Barrister Nineba Innocent Akufo, is joining us from Washington, D.C. He's an attorney and counselor at law, major proponent for decolonization, specialist in immigration law. Thank you for joining us today, Barrister. First question, what are the illegal immigration enabling factors?
There is poverty, there is overpopulation, there is political violence, political instability, or extreme violence in the society, war, pestilence. These are all factors that push people away from their zone of comfort to other areas unknown to them, just because they want to seek refuge in another area, in another country, a country where they absolutely don't know where they're going to. But again, these are the main factors that will push people to leave a zone of comfort to a zone of uncertainty, which at times it's even more violent than where you're coming from.
Illegal immigration, Barrister, is not free. So the question coming up again and again in public discussions, even here in Cameroon, is how can someone choose to invest 2, 3, 4 or 5 million francs CFA in an uncertain and deadly venture instead of staying back home and investing in agriculture, for example? And of course, these are the questions that are coming up in public discussions. From your analysis, why are many young people in particular choosing the illegal way instead of the legal way? Is the legal way too difficult, Barrister?
You know, about the fact that illegal migration is not free, yes, it is not free. Because people spend millions of, like in terms of Cameroon, they spend millions of francs CFA. There are people who've sold land, there are people who've sold their houses, sold all their resources just to get a means of traveling to a foreign country. For example, here in the United States, only to be turned back at the border, or you get to the United States and you try to seek protection or cover inside that particular society, and you're unable to be granted access to the law or to due process, and eventually you're sent back only to have that cumulative effect of poverty again back in your home country. So again, linking to the first question, why do you leave your country? Why? What makes you to actually move away from a zone of comfort to a zone of, uncertainty? So these are things that governments and society, NGOs, non-governmental organizations and structures need to be well propped up in order to facilitate, an enabling environment where people can actually nurture their talents and grow and make their society much more better. The pasture is not greener at the other side. It's a fallacy. It's something that people have come to believe. Well, in certain aspects, it is true, depending on why you're living, where you're coming from. For example, if you're living for a better educational opportunity because your society does not offer those facilities in your country, that's something true. But if you're just going for economic advantages, believe it or not, some of those societies where you're going to, they're structurally disadvantaged more than where you're coming from. It's just, you have to actually vet where you're going to before you even leave your country.
The International Organization for Migration says that delays in state-led rescue operations and hindrance to the operations of non-governmental organizations such as rescue vessels in the central Mediterranean contribute to increasing the numbers of persons dying at sea. What explains that?
It's a clear and simple answer, because they cannot legally migrate to another country. So they choose a different option, or the pressures are just unexpected, something that has just happened immediately, and to seek a legal recourse to go to a foreign country becomes extremely difficult or untenable, so they decide to choose a different option, which is illegally move to another country. So if you take the case of the Cameroons, where there is a political pressure right now, someone fleeing from Bamenda to the western provinces of Cameroon, you just don't need some legal process to go there because the pressure is unsurmountable. Or if you're moving from Bamenda or from those English-speaking regions to Nigeria, for example, it is the refugee crisis. That's what's really pushing you. There's a push factor, which is the violence, the political instability, and the pull factor is some sort of a semblance of peace on the other side. But the thing is, why don't you just seek a legal process of going to a foreign country? Again, as I said, it's extremely difficult, and sometimes you have to vet somebody. And in most cases, people may not be able to go through that rigorous process of looking into documentation before they can be accepted, granted a visa to go to a foreign country. It's so difficult. Like here in the United States, for you to legally come to the United States, you need to go to the American Embassy in Yaoundé. You apply for a visa, you are interviewed, the reason why you're coming here, then you are led into the United States. So that's a legal form of migration. Unlike taking a plane, going through the borders of South America, going through treacherous jungles. Some people get killed, some people die, and sometimes it's a little bit more expensive going through those using the illegal means going to a foreign country than going through the legal process.
Now, the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, Antonio Vitorino, fears that the situation could become normal. From your own standpoint, do you see any positive situation, any positive change after the International Organization for Migration urged countries to stop delaying in their operations, to take action quickly to avoid situations where delays are costing the death of thousands of persons?
Of course, that is true, but you have to understand that the countries where these people are going, these children are going, they themselves, they have their own political pressures. You have right-wing governments in most countries, like in Italy. They don't want people to come into their country. You have right-wing governments in France. They don't want migrants to come into their country. But again, so it still underscores the reason why do these children or why do these people flee from their country. If you make your environment stable, if you make your environment much more amenable for people to stay there, then there is absolutely no reason why they should not go. Invest in the right system of education. Invest in the right infrastructure. Take away this political hegemony that a single party or a single group of people or a single tribal cabal can just run roughshod the entire system for decades and decades upon decades and create destitute inside the society. These are some of the things that we have to actually look into and try to restructure and see if society will be much more amenable to the people that you want them to stay in that particular environment, rather than leave our young people. This is the cream of the society living from your land, and all you're left there, you deplete that land of the young talents, the people that can actually do good for your society, and you leave old structures and old infrastructure, old untenable politicians that just help to groom a very poor society, a society that will just lead into decadence into the future.
Delays in state-led operations as far as the rescue of migrants on the Mediterranean Sea struggling for greener pastures abroad. Of course, we're going to ask Barrister now, what is the way out of this situation?
I think it will never get better as long as the same structural environment is still back in where this push factor is happening, and that attractive environment is on the other side. So, well, we may pray that it will get better. This is what we all pray for because we want to build our society.
That was Barrister Aneneba Innocent Akufo joining us from Washington, D.C. He's an attorney and counselor at law, specialist in immigration law. Thank you so much for your time. And this is where we end this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much for staying with us. Do have a nice time in the company of our programs. Goodbye.